You deserve a retirement that you can take pride in. And I want to let you know that even though you might feel like your situation right now, as far as planning for retirement, is really far behind, or you are um, just not where you need to be, you've got a lot of catching up to do. There is hope out there for you, that you can catch up, that you can get ahead and be in a place where you feel like you're going to be able to do the things that you want to do in your retirement years. That's the goal, right? And the goal today is to talk about whether or not doing what you want to do in retirement means you should move from the place that you have been, from the place that you maybe have lived in for decades. I know that there's one house that I can refer to as home, and it's the one that we actually kind of live in now, but it's been in my family for about 30 something years. And that place I can call home, but I haven't lived there in a long time, right? It's My husband and I moved around in New York City for a long time. We moved around since being back in Atlanta for several places as well. So it's just, I guess it's our thing. But if you are someone who has planted, deeply planted roots, if you are someone who is, somebody who's been in a neighborhood or a city or, just a place, a home, those four walls and that roof for a long time, there are a lot of different considerations to have in mind, I guess, before you make that decision, before you take that plunge. And so, should I stay or should I go? That's the big question as you're deciding where to live in retirement as an LGBTQ plus person. One of the biggest questions actually that LGBTQ plus retirees face is whether or not they're going to stay in that current home or relocate. So let's explore a lot of different factors here. We've got emotional, we've got financial factors, we've got practical issues to consider. And I mean, you've got to just continually keep these in mind. And the first one are those emotional, the first ones, I should say, those emotional considerations and considerations about your community, right? The community that you have around you. A lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community don't necessarily have a great family relationship, a great family dynamic with, immediate family, moms, dads, sometimes, grandparents or whatever, don't necessarily have that. Many do. I do, and I'm so thankful for that. But I know so many who don't. But that just really calls into focus here the role of chosen family. I do have a chosen family as well. I have my family by blood and I have my family by choice. And that family by choice is so crucial and so essential to everyday life, not only while you're working, but of course, while you are in those retirement years, I think especially they become even more important. Also, your community, like the people that you choose to surround yourself with, and also a support system in a local community. Like, do you live somewhere where you have a lot of support from, either social services or groups that you're a part of, or even things like just being able to go out and do a little shopping nearby, or having access to LGBTQ plus friendly healthcare nearby? Do you have a place where you live that is generally friendly to LGBTQ plus folks? It's, probably more so today than compared to, say, 10 years ago, for example, but maybe not so much compared to a few months ago. But at the same time, there are some places that are very LGBTQ plus friendly and some not so much, right? So you've got to make sure that you are comfortable in the area where you live, whether that be a more rural area, whether that be a city, or somewhere in between in the suburbs or the exurbs, I guess, as they call some of those places kind of on the outskirts of the suburbs now, between the suburbs and the rural communities. And so make sure that you're comfortable. And a lot of times that will mean being LGBTQ plus friendly in that area. If you have deep ties in that current location, is moving worth the trade-off? That's a question. And what if your location isn't LGBTQ plus friendly? Do you need to move? Hmm. Well, a stat here that we found was 23% of retirees choose not to downsize simply because they're too attached to their current home and community. 23%, almost a quarter of people choose not to go anywhere because they're too attached emotionally to their current home and their current community. So your emotions could be holding you back from a move, but then, how do you decide what's best for your happiness in the long term? So like I was saying earlier, if you've lived in your home for like 3+ decades, the idea of moving really can feel overwhelming, but staying put can also mean things like higher maintenance costs, accessibility issues, social isolation, perhaps. And so here are some key questions to ask you about this sort of emotional side of things. Do you have those strong social connections in your current community? Is your home still safe and manageable as you age? It's a big consideration because, not only do the costs of upkeep and maintenance to the home go up as the house gets older, right? Things break down, uh, and all of that. The major appliances will go, and the HVAC needs replacing, and so does the water heater, and all of this stuff. And you got to get a new roof, and perhaps new siding or whatever, on the house. Maybe the driveway needs to be repaved or something like that. Those are big ticket items, and so are those things that you can afford to do? So the other part of that is it safe for you to be in that home? Is it a single story home with just a couple of steps maybe to get in or no steps to get in? Are the hallways nice and wide? Are there, if you do have stairs, do you happen to have something that is like one of those chair lifts that goes up? If you have one of those already, great. Maybe it came with the home and you're like, oh, this is the reason I'm buying this house. It's because of the chairlift, and I'll use it when I get to that age. Um, but all those things really, really good to consider. Would it free up financial resources for you to move to a more comfortable retirement, a more comfortable place for you in your retirement? Taking those things like safety and the maintenance of the home and all that into consideration, would then selling that place free up financial resources and allow you to be more comfortable in your retirement years? Are you emotionally prepared to leave behind decades of memories? Or would staying just create unnecessary stress in your later years? You got to weigh those two things. You've made memories in this place for years and years and years with people who you love. Perhaps you've raised kids there, maybe not. Maybe you've had a bunch of pets there that you love. Maybe you and your partner or your spouse have lived there for a long time. Leaving that place does not mean that you are leaving that person or those people or whomever or those pets and their memories behind. You take them with you wherever you go, right? So you just got to weigh what is best for you and not necessarily the emotional part. Like if you step back and you leave the emotions out of it for a second, what decision do you make there? So it's definitely not just a financial decision, it is deeply emotional. And I can help you sort of take those things into consideration with the financial aspect of it and take a deep dive into your complete financial situation by working with you individually, because the answers to all of those questions that I just posed really are so individualized that I can't sit here on a podcast and say, oh, this is definitely what you should do, because I don't know you and your situation, at least yet. Go to the website, takeprideinretirement.com, takeprideinretirement.com. You can also call me 855-246-9211. 855-246-9211 is the number, and you can get in touch with me. I can take a look at your individual situation, give you fiduciary advice. And what that is advice that's in your best interest, not advice that's, in my best interests and going to put more money in my pocket. That's not what I'm in business for here. I am in the business of helping you. And that is what I am legally and morally bound to do as someone who is a fiduciary, is to help you have a retirement you can take pride in and do what is in your best interest to make that happen. All right. TakePrideInRetirement.com to schedule that free consultation, free of any cost, any obligation. Some financial factors to consider as well. There's the cost of living, of course. When you talk about maybe, do I want to move from a more rural area or suburban area into a big city, what's the difference in the cost of living there? If I want to move state to state, what's the difference of the cost there? And then, even moving from one size home to another. Like if you've got this big, 7 or 8 bedroom home or something that you've lived in for so long, 2 stories and all this, and just way too much to manage in retirement, and you want to move to just like a little 1 bedroom condo, that is going to very probably be a savings for you, especially in things like, monthly bills, the heating and the cooling, the, water bills and stuff like that, and the power bills. Those are things to take into consideration as well. The hidden costs of staying, as we mentioned a minute ago, are something else you need to really take into consideration here. The maintenance, taxes, modifications for aging in place. Obviously, using that same scenario that I talked about just a second ago with the big 7 bedroom house versus the 1 bedroom condo, the hidden cost there not only would be the maintenance on such a huge home, the heating and cooling and the power and all that, but it would also be the tax implications, because property taxes, generally speaking, on a 1 bedroom condo are going to be a lot less than on the 7 bedroom house, because the tax assessment is going to be much more on the 7 bedroom house than on the 1 bedroom condo, right? So you got to take that into consideration. I mean, aging in place is the goal for a lot of people, a lot of retirees. 88% of people ages 50 through 80 say that they want to stay in their homes as long as possible. But is that realistic? Well, as I said, those home modifications can be a real cost, can range from thousands of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars or more for full renovations. Also, if you want to stay in your home, maybe you'll need in-home care. Well, that averages more than $5,000 a month, according to Genworth. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, all of that stuff can add up, especially for retirees on a fixed income. Utility costs can be 30 to 50% higher in older homes as well. If you've been there for a long time and maybe it's not up to current day standards as far as energy efficiency, you could be paying up to 50% more in your utility costs. So aging in place, yeah, it does seem like the more comfortable option, right? But it's important to be honest about whether or not your home can support you long term. So again, those stairs, those narrow hallways, like I talked about, do I have easy access to healthcare, grocery stores, social activities nearby? If I need help, do I have family? Do I have chosen family that will be able to do that for me? Or will I need to pay for in-home care? Or will I need to pay for long-term care in a facility somewhere? That's a big important factor to take into consideration. Have you planned for that? Another factor to consider here, social isolation. Are you somewhere where you're not ever going to see anybody once you retire? Once you're not going into an office every day, or at least interacting with people every day, whatever your job might be. This story in The Guardian quoted some statistics that say studies have shown that loneliness can be just as detrimental to health. Loneliness can be just as detrimental to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. How's that for a stat, huh? So if staying in your home means being isolated, it could be time to consider a move to a community where you'll have more social engagement. And more social engagement with perhaps like-minded people who you have some things in common with. That would be something to consider and explore as well. So if you want to explore aging in place options without financial stress and plan for whatever you want to have happen in your retirement years, go to takeprideinretirement.com. TakePrideInRetirement.com. Schedule a consultation today. You can also call 855-246-9211. That's toll free, 855-246-9211. All right, so the true cost of downsizing here is something that I want to go over as well before I get to this interview with the guy from Tax Act that I wanted to talk about or talk to in just a few. But downsizing, it's often viewed as kind of a simple, as I was saying at the beginning of the show, kind of a simple decision, selling the big home to free up equity, reduce costs, moving somewhere smaller. So, your payments are lower and all of that. It's a lot more complex than that, though. I mean, beyond the financial aspects of the decision, of course, there are emotional challenges and there are logistical challenges too. downsizing can be liberating because it allows retirees to shed the responsibilities of all those things we've been talking about, the large home, get rid of clutter, get rid of all that stuff that you've accumulated over the years, right? Embrace a more manageable lifestyle. But others find the transition difficult, especially if they've built strong community ties there. So, before making the decision, consider the pros and cons. Some pros might be, the lower property taxes and maintenance costs, as I was saying. You could unlock home equity for retirement expenses. It would be easier to maintain and manage a smaller home. More opportunities, perhaps, depending on where you move, for social connections, social interaction, especially if you're in a senior-friendly community, especially an LGBTQ plus friendly senior community. You can move closer to friends or family, or better healthcare facilities as well. That's such an important consideration because, we get older, things break down, right? Could allow for a lower stress lifestyle with less clutter and less home upkeep. I've turned into Marie Kondo all of a sudden. Does it bring you joy? Does it spark joy? The cons here, though, to consider about downsizing, the emotional attachment to your home goes back to that very sort of core feeling, right? Moving expenses, real estate fees, closing costs, taxes, all the different moving costs, the cost to hire the movers and all of that. That can all total, more than $30,000 in many cases. Competitive housing market right now. Good luck finding a home for sale that you want. You can probably sell your home. I don't think you would have much trouble with that, but buying one could be a little bit more difficult in the market today and how it's been for the last couple of years. The risk of regretting the move too, if you downsize too soon. And adjusting to the new community and making new social connections, that can be challenging as well. And here's the thing, more than a third of people, according to studies, more than a third of people who are retirees actually upsize rather than downsize. And they choose those larger homes to accommodate that visiting family or the chosen family that comes to visit or stay for a while, and those friends that come and stay for a while, or to maybe maintain hobbies that require extra space. If you like stuff like woodworking or painting or whatever, maybe you need a big garage. Maybe you like working on cars. You need a big garage to do that, right? So that's, I think, kind of a fun thing that more people do, of course, downsize, but then a lot of people do, more than a third, do upsize as well. So remember, takeprideinretirement.com is the website for you to check out. Okay, also, quickly here, I wanted to look at the cost of living when you are deciding where you should move. Traditionally, states like Florida have been looked at as a very affordable place. But according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, Florida has actually kind of moved on up even toward the top of the list as far as the cost of living index in a particular state. And so, I was looking at this chart, or actually kind of a map here that Yahoo Finance had compiled based on data from the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. The lowest cost states tend to be those that are kind of in the deep South, right? Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, those kind. Iowa, also a very low cost state to move to. In the Northeast, the most affordable two states there are Vermont and Maine. Pennsylvania, also a place to consider. The Midwest, you're looking at, aside from Iowa, North and South Dakota, but then also Wisconsin and Michigan. Fairly affordable there as well. Out West, you're going to run into some trouble if you want to live in California, because as we all know, it's very expensive. Oregon, slightly less so. Washington is on up there as well. But Nevada, hey, I could go live in close to some slot machines, sure. It's kind of on the lower end of the spectrum as far as the cost of living, according to this data. So, you got to take that into account as well